Hello, guys and gals, and welcome to another episode of Monster Families. Today, we're going to be looking at one of the more annoying monster families in Diablo 2. And if you're like me, you've probably died to these guys a couple times, especially on spellcasters, specifically because of how annoying they are and how they tend to avoid minions. These are called the Sand Leapers, or the Leapers in general. The entire family is generally designed around essentially this design where the monsters actually like leap towards you, and it is a form of leap attack. It's very similar to the barbarian's leap attack. So when they do use that ability, they are actually actively attacking you, and it can do a lot of damage, a lot of physical damage. On top of this, another one of the big issues with these monsters is that they're very hard to kill for melee and ranged characters, simply because they like to get knocked back every single time they're attacked. So if you hit one for whatever reason, like for instance, say you charge into one, you will notice that they tend to get knocked back every single time you touch them. You can sometimes kind of like lock them in place by stunning them or freezing them, or just simply pinning them up against a wall seems to be the preferred method. Just kind of push them up against the wall and see if you can get them that way. But for the most part, they tend to be just extremely annoying. For melees, they're relatively difficult to kill, and for ranged characters, they generally tend to be a very big threat because, well, they just run in and they'll hit you regardless of whatever you've got going on. Especially necromancers tend to be one of the worst with these particular monsters because, well, they're not like gonna engage with your army. A lot of the times they will specifically hunt down necromancer and hit you in the back of the head and run away. And a group of these, especially like with might or extra strong enchantment, can definitely take out your necromancer with relative ease, which makes for a very frustrating fight with the necromancer. If we go to the Ariat Summit page, Ariat Summit says, these pesky creatures largely inhabit desert regions. Although the other species are known to exist, the desert leapers are the most common. The leapers get their name from their tremendous leaping ability, and as a result, these extremely agile creatures make for difficult targets. Leapers are versatile animals, and the desert variety has an extremely slow resting metabolism to minimize their water use and storage. The harsh environment of the Aerodoc, however, leaves little room for mistakes, and these creatures never pass up an opportunity to eat or drink. Packs sighting a potential meal leave for their resting spots and work together to bring down their quarry with great tenacity. It says leapers use an attack similar to the barbarian's leap attack, and sometimes it can be time consuming to take them out because they get knocked back whenever they are struck, as I'm talking about. You can use cold or freeze attacks to keep the leapers in place so you can attack them, and you can't just kind of just run around and chase them and try and hit them. You can hold down the attack button, and once you've selected, they basically name lock them and just run around after them. Another big thing about the leapers is that they have additional chances to do additional damage. So the leapers, most of the regular leapers anyway, have the ability to deal poison damage in Nightmare and Hell difficulty, which means that if they manage to land a strike on you, they can apply a pretty devastating poison, which can rip you to shreds. I'm sure you're well aware, crit poisons are just absolutely nasty, and all it takes is one of these guys to tap you and cause a crit poison. There is also a guest version of these monsters that are also leapers. This is the Cave Leaper and the Tomb Leaper, Creeper. These, instead of poison damage, have an additional chance to deal cold damage, which a lot of monsters have an additional chance to deal cold damage in Diablo 2. Now, overall, they're very strange monsters in terms of like what they can accomplish. Their damage output is kind of high, considering what they are. They have pretty decent physical damage, and their attack rating is actually pretty high as well, which means that they're probably going to hit you if you don't have any defense. On top of this, they also have some pretty crazy like resistances across the board. Their magic resistance is non-existent, but that's the case for most monsters in the game. But they do have a guaranteed 20% to 25% physical resistance. Then on top of that, they have 60 to 80% fire resistance, depending on what difficulty they're in. Some do not have any fire resistance, like the Cave Leaper, which is at 0, but most of them have pretty good fire res. They also have no cold res for the most part, except that standout Cave Leaper. So cold tends to be the better element to deal with them. And then on top of the fact that most of them are nearly immune to fire, a lot of them are also immune to lightning as well. So on top of the fire, they're also immune to lightning. So they're either immune to fire, like the Sand Leaper or the Tomb Creeper, or they're immune to lightning, like the Tree Lurker or the Cliff Lurker. Although they tend to have no poison resistance in any difficulty, which is also pretty good. But for the most part, you can see that their poison resistance and their magic resistance is non-existent. Over here on the guest monsters, they're slightly different. So the guest monsters actually do have a small amount of poison res and magic resistance, and they're immune to cold instead of fire or lightning. So in hell difficulty, they're actually still immune to cold. However, poison still seems to be like the best element to deal with these guys, and it kind of seems like the best element in general to deal with them because, well, they're constantly running away from you. So if you could tag them with one poison, and they're running around and leaping and doing their whole little schmeal, right? Like it doesn't really matter because they're slowly dying from the poison anyway. So it definitely seems like poison is one of the better elements to deal with sand. The leapers, the leaper family, which is the sand leaper, the cave leaper, the tomb creeper, the tree lurker, the cliff lurker, and also the cave leaper and the tomb creeper, which is a pretty big family. Just a really annoying family, honestly. They're just not really worth stopping to engage in unless you can kill them effectively. And most of the time, honestly, I just run by them these days. I remember back in the day, I used to try and kill them on a Zeal Paladin. You'd hit them one time with a Zeal Paladin, and they would just fly backwards, and you couldn't even get a full Zeal combination off of them because they constantly get knocked back whenever they get touched, which just makes them super annoying to deal with. And then they chase you. They're actually really fast. And they leap on you and hit you and smack you in the back of the head. It literally looks like they're slapping you in the back of the head. By the way, when they attack, like I'm not even joking. Like if you're not near them and they leap on you, it literally just looks like they're slapping you in the back of the head. They run up and they're just like slap. Come here, let me just slap you in the back of the head. I mean, look at the hands go up and everything. Look, they're just like, and they're rude. They're very rude. They're almost as annoying as these guys. These stupid ones that fly up in the air. At least you can kill these guys. Like, you know, if you can get to them, you can kill them, right? But like the ones that fly, you can't do anything to them unless they land on the ground. But I digress. They make good corpses on the ground. That's what they do. Like, yeah, die, you stupid little cave leapers. Nobody likes you. They do have some block chance, but it's not particularly very high. The lower level ones only have 15% block chance, and the higher level ones, like the guest monsters, are 16. With the highest block chance version being the Cliff Lurker, which I can't remember where exactly the Cliff Lurker is. The location of each of these, of course, is different. They're not strictly Act 2 monsters. They do exist in other places. I'm pretty sure these are also in Act 3, and they're also in Act 5. I don't remember if they're in Act 4. I don't think they're in Act 4. No, they're not in Act 4, I don't think. Overall, just really annoying monsters. Avoid them if you can. Kill them if you can. I definitely wouldn't ever go hunting these guys down. I don't think there's any specific reason to hunt them down. They also cannot be revived, as you can see right here, so necromancers can't even revive them. You can use them as skeletons and mages, but you can't revive them as actual minions, which I don't even know why you would want to revive them as minions, because they're just terrible. Like, they would literally just run around and then get hit and then get knocked back, and they probably do next to nothing as revives anyway. So it's probably a blessing in disguise that you can't actually revive these guys, because if you could, you would just have like the worst army ever. It would not be a good army. It would not. Their HP seems kind of high for hell difficulty. I was looking at that as well. And comparatively to, like, let's compare them to, say, a one high HP monster that I know of. So, like, one of the highest HP monsters in the game is the Regurgitator Demons, which have 19,782 HP. Yeah, that's, if you guys ever wonder why these Regurgitator Demons take, like, ridiculously large amounts of damage to kill, it's because they have some of the highest HP in the game at nearly 20,000. So at 4,469, they're roughly, what, 1/4 of the HP of a Regurgitator Demon. And then to put that into perspective, let's take like an Oblivion Knight. You can see the Oblivion Knight only has 9,273 by comparison. So there's definitely a huge difference in HP between them. It looks like comparing them to the Regurgitator Demon, they're about a quarter of what you would normally see. And then you can also compare them to like some of the weaker monsters in the game, like the Fallen, which the Fallen have 3,273 at maximum. So they're slightly higher than Fallen, but not necessarily very high in HP. They at least have better HP than the Fallen in Act 1, which is, I guess, something. It doesn't really matter, though, how much HP they have, because most of the time you hit them and they get knocked back, and then you can't kill them because they run away, and then they go regenerate. And that's something to talk about as well, which is their regeneration capability. So because they're constantly moving away from you, monsters in this game have a particularly high regeneration. And if you let a monster regenerate, like leapers, which are going to regenerate because they're constantly running away from you, right? Well, if you let them regenerate, they will regenerate all their HP within a matter of seconds, which does kind of multiply their HP a little bit from their 4,300 because technically they're constantly, bouncing around the screen, they're moving around everywhere, they're constantly doing crazy things, and then by the time they come back to you, they're going to regenerate a pretty hefty chunk of that HP back to their bar, right? So it's not going to be as easy to kill them just because they have low HP, because of course they're going to be regenerating, and it's kind of hard to stop them from regenerating. So you might need like prevent monster heal would be pretty good for them, I would imagine. I think that pretty much covers the lurkers, the leapers, the sand leapers, the cave leapers, the tomb creepers, the tree lurkers, the cliff lurkers, the tomb creepers, yeah. There's a lot of different names for these guys. Honestly, we can sum them up in one word. They're annoying. As always, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe button if you are enjoying the content. And this is my full-time job, so I will appreciate it if you guys support the channel. And as always, keep watching.